Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Rabbinic Cynic. I'm your host, Andrew Allen Bentley, Rabbi Andrew, Rabbi Reading Glasses, taking off reading glasses because I can see just fine, not reading anything anyway. Today I want to talk about three things. Elections in Israel. I'm going to go back and talk about that a little bit, just kind of explain what's going on with there. Today in the United States, it's election day. It's the midterms. Did everybody go out and vote? Can't complain if you don't vote. I know it's difficult. It's difficult to decide who to vote for. And the other thing I'd like to speak about is a podcast, vlog, YouTube, by comedian Ari Shaffir, former rabbinical student, went to yeshiva student, who abandoned it all to choose a life to go into comedy. Story sounds kind of familiar, but take out the comedy, put music in there. I'm going to talk about that a little bit because I thought it was a really good show. But before I do that, we're going to talk about some of the serious issues that are going on. So I know last week I kind of went through, talked about the Israeli elections, right? The Israeli elections, unlike any election you've experienced either in England or in the United States, right? Today's the midterms, but in Israel, first of all, we've had, 4 or 5 elections in the last 5 years? 5 years. About 18 months ago, there was a coalition, a broad coalition formed by the Yesh Atid party and a number of the more moderate parties. Say center-left is probably a better way. And it was the first time in history that the Arab parties were included in an Israeli coalition. I think is awesome. It's awesome. It was a very fragile coalition, which is what led to when you're one or two votes away from a vote of no confidence. That's why Israel keeps going back to elections. Anyway, so last Tuesday, it was a choice between Benjamin Netanyahu, the opposition leader, and this coalition of the right-wing parties, including now the third biggest party in the Knesset, the National Religious Party, which is made up, which is kind of a cobbled party. It's a unified party. They did this before the election, so that what happened last time wouldn't happen. So that they would win. So that they wouldn't be fractured. There's this idea of a threshold in Israeli politics in the constitution that you have to reach 3.75. 3.25 or 3.75. I've senior moments. It happens when you get older, folks. And if you don't reach that threshold, so you don't get a seat, right? So you become disenfranchised. And basically what happened was last time, a number of these national religious parties, and there's a lot of them because they represent kind of a broad swath of that population. It's quite a big population in Israel. National Zionist means that they believe that the state of Israel should be a state. They serve in the army. They do all sorts of unlike the ultra-Orthodox who do not serve in the army, do not. We'll discuss that at a different time, but let's just say that they are not exactly the most contributing members of Israeli society. Let's just say that. They banded together and said they'll support Bibi Netanyahu, but they're made up of a lot of different groups. One of those groups, and this is what happened today, is considered to be that they're very anti-LGBTQ. Right now, they're threatening not even to go into the government because they're not going to get what they really want. What do they want? They want some. It's not that different than some of the far right in this country and their opposition to LGBTQ plus rights and taking the Bible so literally. They're just stuck in the old times. But they hold that one seat that could be the difference. But Bibi actually won with a much bigger majority this time. So we're talking, it would be 65 versus 64 if they don't come in. But at the same time, I don't think Bibi really wants that. He wants to bring them in. If it was me, I would just tell them to fuck off. right? Just fuck off with your outdated ideas. You do not represent the Israeli population. You don't even represent a majority of modern Orthodox people in Israel, let alone the majority of the population who are just secular. And that motherfucker didn't even serve in the army. So what the fuck is he doing, complaining about the ultra-Orthodox and everything else? He's no different than the ultra-Orthodox. So I just want to say my piece on that, right? They can go fuck themselves. That's a very small aspect of it. Shame on you, Bibi, for even entertaining them. I know you don't really care about this kind of stuff, but shame on you, right? You could do it without him. Maybe you could reach out to some of the middle parties. I'm not particularly happy with how this election has turned out in Israel. I was kind of, I just don't think it's good PR for Israel, but as an Israeli, I am loyal to Israel. This is my son's unit. This is my son's unit in the IDF. That's how loyal to Israel I am. I'm just saying, I'm loyal to Israel, but at the same time, I recognize when they're fucking up. And Bibi, I wish you the best. I voted for you back in the 90s, but sometimes people change, and but there hasn't seemed to be a leader that has really stepped up, and that's part of the problem in Israel. There hasn't been a leader that has stepped up. So that's what I'm going to say about the Israeli election today. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. As an Israeli, I kind of see things a little closer. When you live in a place, you don't necessarily see it in the same way that you do when you just kind of read in the news. I read the Israeli newspapers, a swath of different Haaretz, some of the other that's the left-wing Israeli newspaper, but I also read some of the other Israeli newspapers. The English one is the Jerusalem Post. There's the Times of Israel. I like to listen to the Israeli radio for my news. But if you don't speak Hebrew, it's difficult to access. Haaretz is a good one. Unfortunately, it's a little, if you're a little right wing, Haaretz is the left wing Israeli newspaper, so you may have issues with that. But they also have an English version. But there are other Israeli newspapers out there which have English versions as well, so you get a better understanding of Israeli politics when you read the Israeli newspapers as opposed to, say, like the New York Times commentary on the Israeli election. So that's just kind of where I want to put that. I want to put out there for you. I want to get more educated on Israeli politics and what's going on in Israel. Read the Israeli newspapers. They are available in English. You do see a variety of opinions. The Times of Israel I wouldn't exactly call journalism. They don't necessarily, but it's a lot of contributors for all those papers from across the spectrum of Israeli society, and sometimes American and British Jews as well, the Jewish world. With that, I'd like to talk about just a little bit about the midterms here in the United States. It's become this, no one knows what the fuck is going on. Nobody knows whether we are going to have, are the Republicans going to take the House and Congress, or is it going to be a squeaker for the Democrats? We're talking about the economy. We're talking about inflation. But the big issue and the question that arises is, will the Supreme Court overturning of Roe drive more Democrats and will vote on that issue? I know for me personally, I'm going to throw it out there, it's an important issue. I believe that the overturning of abortion rights, a woman's right to choose and decide for her own health, is the tip of the iceberg of some very negative feelings, negative actions that can happen, negative consequences. Once you go down a difficult path, that path of taking rights away from people, where does it end? Right now, we're in a modern society. This modern society, right? You would think that we would stop taking the Bible so literally, and that it is dictating politics. But look, we're seeing it in Israel. We're seeing it in the United States. We're seeing it all around the world. It's kind of why I'm the rabbinic cynic. I'm very cynical about taking the Bible literally. I'm a rabbi. I can't escape that. I never escaped that. And this is where I'm going to segue into this new wonderful podcast I've discovered. I discovered it through my sister-in-law, Meredith. If you're out there, Meredith, I fucking loved it. We watched an hour-and-a-half special. It's by Ari Shaffir called... And it's just, this is the title, and I think it's brilliant. I wish I'd have come up with myself. It's called Jew The title is called Just Jew. Now, anyone else that would say that, you would say, what an anti-Semite. He deserved the right to say it. He is the son of a Holocaust survivor. He is a former yeshiva student from Jerusalem. I may have run into him one time when I was in yeshiva. But different to me, at 2 years old, 2 years into his 2 years in yeshiva in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, he decided that he did not believe in God. And he's very, very funny, I just have to say. And he goes through all of the different traditions of Judaism. He talks about the arguments in the Talmud from a very humorous perspective. It's very crude, so if you don't like F-bombs and people talking about their genitalia, this might not be the show for you. If you take offense easily, this might not be the show for you, but I personally think it's brilliant. I'm like, why didn't I come up with it? And we have very similar stories, and similar but different, because he decided, why am I afraid of people's reactions for turning on the lights? Jews were not allowed to turn, Orthodox Jews, on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, you're not allowed to use electricity. Just one of the many things you can't do. And so he was like, the light was keeping him awake. So instead of, he was more afraid of what people would think if he turned off the light than God, which made him, So he goes, I realize that if that's the case, I don't really, so if I'm not really going to be, so if I'm on track to be a rabbi, probably not a good thing to go on that course. If I'm afraid of people for turning off a light and not God. Maybe I don't believe in what God is. What is God? So he left Orthodoxy, became a comedian, and the rest of his family is still Orthodox. And he goes around discussing what do Orthodox Jews believe in? What are some of that? And it's very humorous. It's also informative at the same time. He kind of makes fun of some other religions. All religions have their crazy, fucked up ideas, and that's kind of what he brings about. And it really resonated with me because I didn't actually make that decision when I was in yeshiva. I would accidentally, I would bump the light switch, turn it on, and it didn't take me. It took me becoming a rabbi, moving to the United States. I'm like this. I really respect you, Ari. If you ever watch my show, I really respect you because you just decided not to do it. I kept going. I just kept going, became a rabbi. And then when I was a rabbi, I decided a lot of it was the Orthodox, especially the Orthodox. I'm still progressive, but I decided that this is all bullshit. Come on. Some of these, they're just finding loopholes and excuses for excuses. Right? He gave up. I thought the best example he gave was Bittul B'Shishim, right? Bittul B'Shishim, which is this concept of it's nullified in the 60th. You just got to watch his Ari Shaffir. It's spelled Shaffir, Shaffir. And it's just called Jew on YouTube. This in Kashrut, what if a random non-Jew comes in and someone's making this huge cauldron of soup and they throw in some ham in the soup? Do you eat the soup? That's a question. Does anyone know the answer to that question? Write in your comments if you know the answer to that question. I kind of gave it away in my answer. But basically the answer is, if it's 1/60th, then you can eat this. You can eat your ham soup. This doesn't become ham anymore. Which is, any rabbi out there, any Orthodox rabbi, that's a basic rule. Bittul B'Shishim, right? Bittul B'Shishim, which means it's nullified in 1/60th. That actually applies to chametz on Passover as well. So if you drop a piece of bread into your soup accidentally, as long as it's only 1/60th, you're good. So I really recommend this show. He, in a serious way, he brings, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, the anti-Semitic memes that we see thrown out there. He asked the audience, say some things that people think about Jews. And all they did was they throw out the anti-Semitic memes, right? And then he goes, there are some positive things about us, right? We're smart. There's also some positive things about us. So he, in a very humorous way, he highlights what it means to be Jewish. He educates about it, and it's really, really funny. That's what it's funny and educational at the same time. Again, I wished I had that personality to do it. I'm not a stand-up comedian. I'm a rabbi. I'm a rabbi and a musician. I did something similar to him. I decided not to be an Orthodox rabbi and went into a career in the music business, which I still am doing which I've been, you can see all the guitars behind me. So Ari, if you're watching, I'd love to be on part of your podcast. I think you and I have a lot to talk about. My dad never swung the chicken. We did the money instead. Again, you got to watch. This is a big plug for Ari Shaffir on his YouTube channel. His YouTube channel called Jew. So this is the Rabbinic Cynic. That's my little roundup. I'm going to start watching some of Ari's podcasts, and I'm going to be commenting on them as part of my Tuesday spot because I just think he's brilliant. And so that's it. I'll see you Friday for my Shabbat, my Erev Shabbat special, where I'm going to take some of the biblical stories and I'm going to lighten them up a little bit this week in the spirit of Ari Shaffir's stories. I think that they're wonderful. The way he looks at them, I think it's, even though he's making jokes and he's a comedian, there's some profound and interesting ideas that we can kind of see hidden under the surface of what he's talking about. So with that, everybody go out and vote. I don't give a shit who you vote for. All I'm saying is I'm only endorsing one candidate for this election, and that is Jan Harnick for City Council, your number one choice. Jan can, and she really does care. That's all I'm going to say. That's the only thing I'm going to say about my politics and who I'm going to vote for in my local election. Again, vote for Jan Harnick for City Council. Number one, your number one choice. This ranked voting thing's confusing. Number one choice. Jan really cares and gives a shit about this community. And with that, I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful Tuesday. Live long and prosper. And I still think about science fiction all the time. I got Comic-Con tickets. I did. I'm so excited. I want to do a cosplay. Okay? All right. Bye, everybody, and have a wonderful Tuesday. Tuesday is the third day of the week in the Hebrew calendar and the second day of the week in the secular calendar, in the secular week. And so happy Tuesday. And if you're living out here in the desert, there is a 70% chance of rain, which means it's not going to rain. Goodbye. Lihitraot. I'll see you on the other side. Bye.